are in a public meeting for a joint budget session discussion. Make sure that you speak one at a time. Don't talk over each other so that Anne Marie can capture it all. And we'll turn it over to Dean.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thanks everyone for being here. We really appreciate everyone taking the time to be here, council and staff. I think I can speak for the staff that we feel it a real privilege to work with this council we're working with. Over the years, we've had a lot of different city councils, and we really do feel your support and your concern for Kaysville. And we're all in this together. We all want to do what's best for Kaysville. We love Kaysville, and it's a great place to work. We all feel that way. A great place to live. And so we have department heads invited so they can answer any specific questions you might have. Our purpose is to give you the absolute best information we can give you, and then help you make the decision as you go forward with the budget. The budget identifies priorities and what's important to you. So it's your budget. So it's not an absolute. Budgets are never absolute. It's a moving target. It's just a work plan. Things change. For example, the Fed just raised interest rates again. And what does that mean? Interest rates going up, that's good for us because our investment earnings are going to earn more money. But what does that do to sales tax? So those kind of things that we're always trying to navigate. We're still early in the process. We haven't received the county assessed values as far as taxes, so we don't know what that looks like. As far as timing, there's still lots of time. We have a hard date of May 18th to adopt a tentative budget, and it's just a tentative budget. You still have opportunity to work on it after that. The other hard date would be June 21st. If you do not go through truth and taxation, which I wouldn't recommend, you have to adopt the budget by June 21st. If you do go through truth and taxation, then you have until August to adopt the budget. You work under a tentative budget. So last week we talked about what we're all about a mission statement, about our goals, and I would hope today we would find maybe a similar path, a similar discussion. Start with capital items. I know obviously compensation's on the mind of a lot of people, but that's certainly an important part of the budget, but it's not the entire budget. So we need to also look at capital and where we're going, not only this year, but in future years. So departments are here. I don't think we've asked them to give any kind of formal presentation. We just want them to be available to answer questions that the council has. They're the experts, not me or Levi. So let's jump right into the capital schedule, and we'll kind of go through these quickly. And really, council, this is your discussion. These are the items on our capital schedule that we've talked about. Just as a reminder, there are 4 columns there. Fiscal year 23 is what we are currently doing in our existing budget. The second column, FY24, is what we've proposed. And then kind of a snapshot looking out what needs to be done. If something is in red, it is not included in the budget. If something is highlighted in blue, which we'll see later on, it is funded through an alternative source of revenue like impact fees or other things. So it doesn't affect the general fund, doesn't affect property taxes, anything like that. So the first item that we talked about last week was the fire station. We think there's a need there, but I think timing is is really the discussion point. And again, I don't want to speak for any of the departments, but we're thinking that maybe that is something that we can move down the road just a little bit, not very far, but consider. Anyway, council?
Well, so then the question then on that would be, how far do you think?
I can give you what other people are doing, as far as around the county. Layton just built their fourth station. North Davis has their replacement station, under build right now. Syracuse is under design for Station 2. Farmington's under design for Station 2. Everybody's growing but us. Clinton just did a $2.6 million expansion. Isn't part of their COPS yet because they're embedded with each other, but put more bedrooms in and things of that nature. They're a little bit smaller. South Weaver's not doing much. They're just coming on board with some full-timers. They're only full-timers, the chief. So, and then all the rest of them are part-timers. So that's what everybody else is doing. But it's not playing tennis, but how far do you want to kick this down the road? The reason it is there, because that was the plan. And I know Shane's not here, and I'm not piggybacking on that, but that was the last email to you is let's go for this. We have a site. What I didn't tell you, this has to do with site related now. We just had our ISO inspection. I think I did tell you. After our ISO, in its free service, you can pick some spots and then we'll let you know what is the better spot. So we've done that so far. We haven't got anything back yet, but we still think we have, for response times and travel, we still think we have the best spot. And the answer to your question, how far do you want to kick it down the road? I can give you the facts that we started about 16% of our call volume when we were running about 1,700 calls a year over on the west side. Now we're running about 2,000 calls a year, and we're about 21% over on the west side. So it is growing. We have more potential growth. What is our growth out? 45,000 in 2040 or whatever that is. So there'll be more people on that west side, but a younger community. So, to be good stewards of the government's money at 20%, and we do that, that's a.
Well, I know this was on the 5-year plan. It's in your 5-year plan. When did that 5-year?
Plan, and I've been here 5.5 years.
I was gonna say, when did that plan start? Was that your plan 5 years ago? Okay.
It was, but as we talked about with Dean and Shane, when your 5-year plan shifts, it's because things didn't come out the way you thought they would come out.
Right, and that's.
Whether it's finances or your call volume or whatever that is.
Right. So when you talk about it's okay to wait a little bit, how long is a little bit?
I don't know. I think we continue to monitor the call volume.
Just to watch the
response.
Well, their costs are going up. Our call volume's going up to 240 calls a year since I've been here.
And of course, the other piece is financing it.
Well,
financing it and staffing it, of course.
It comes, please understand that, it comes with some people.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it comes at cost, and that's understandable. But then the question is, and one of the questions I had written down is, remind me on the debt retirement. When does Pioneer Park, isn't that the soonest debt that retires?
The ones to look at probably are the bonds we have for the building authority.
Those are in the 30s, right? 30,
Yeah, 31 and
35.
34.
31, and City Hall 34.
Okay, and I wouldn't think we'd want to, we can't move it out that far, but didn't we have some large debt that's retiring within a couple of years? Not that I know.
We had
Pioneer Park.
Pioneer Park. 2025 for Pioneer Park.
Okay,
I think we're.
that's what I
paying off the
remember,
ambulance.
that I forgot it was through, okay, then there's some of it. Okay,
Yeah, this is what you're thinking.
that's what I was thinking.
Pioneer Park, that's in the debt service fund.
Yeah.
Okay,
That's 25.
because there's always major things, but the two major things are on here with the ops center power plant.
And that kicks us to the next one. Maybe Josh and Brian can probably talk about that one, the operations center and what we want to do there. Josh, do you have any feedback on that?
Yeah, but as far as timing.
Yeah, and what the needs are.
Yeah, so, from our perspective, and I think power is probably in a similar position, and parks as well, as we share that that building. We do have limitations on what we're able to do currently, whether that's proper storage of materials, chemicals, trying to protect the assets that we do have in terms of some of the more like delicate pieces of equipment, sweepers, vac trucks that have a lot of like temperature sensitive hoses and things like that. Keeping our materials out of exposure to the weather. You know, we're installing water pipe and valves and fittings that have to go in the culinary system as they're currently sitting out exposed to the elements. We've got to disinfect those as we're trying to put them in on leaks, things like that. We are, I think we're doing the best that we can, making use of the space that we currently have. Levi, as you started there, I'm not trying to get off into the weeds here, but the mission statement is a document that I love. I found that online when I interviewed with the city, and everything that we do in public works ties back to this statement here. We're always trying to get better. We're trying to get more efficient, trying to be more equitable and effective in what we're doing. So I think the kind of status quo is we've been doing the best that we can with the space that we have. We continue to make additional desk space in the portable. We've got what used to be a storage room in the operations center that we've repurposed into office and kind of meeting space. So in terms of efficient and effective, our use of that facility and the yard with it, we feel like we want to, can, and need to do more.
Brian, any comments?
I'd just like to echo some of what Josh said. I mean, we just keep shifting things around, trying to make it work, and we find ourselves putting more and more of our gear and our stuff outside because we're running out of options. Just this last year, we've shifted offices around, we've shifted where we store our stuff around, trying to make it so that we can get things to work in there. We've reorganized our supply room and put some more things outside that weren't outside before. And just give you an idea, we've got this year, I'm currently getting rid of probably thousands of dollars worth of wire that rotted on a reel because there's nothing we can do. I've talked to.
Because it was outside.
Yeah, because it was outside where we could have stored on those reels that we don't use very often. We could have stored properly in a covered area. So there's some of it we were able to get respun, and some of it they tried to respin and it just crumbled on us. So our reel trailers and things like that. So there's just different options, different things that would be nice, but we're making do. We're trying to reorganize and shift things around and make it work. Our workstation is getting smaller and smaller, where we have 10-foot arms that we're putting up now. When we go in there and set up our 10-foot arm to build it before we go out in the yard or out on the lines, it now goes from wall to wall. So if you need to get a tool, you have to go under the arm to go get it and then come back under the arm to work on it. So it's just one of those things that we're working around it, but it's definitely not convenient.
It's not optimal.
Yeah, and I feel like it's getting closer and closer to becoming more of a necessity and a need, rather than a convenience. It's becoming more and more that way.
Maybe just as a reminder what that number entails, it was a new facility for Public Works and Power, and taking the existing facility and making improvements to that as well. And it also included significant dollars towards the site improvements. As we move forward, we can look at that and see if that's the best course, or is the best course to not make any site improvements and build a new building. So I think there's some things we can still explore there. I think that number, and I mean, it's unreachable.
So, may I,
But maybe we can make
I
some
don't want to get too
adjustments.
far in the woods, and I definitely don't want to go off into the left field here, but we were talking about space, operations center, and, $32 million, which would be I don't know what the payment on a bond like that would be, so, but you have to have a revenue source. So in the interim, we have a couple of companies building some pretty good sized open warehouses really close. Have we looked at, in the interim, of possibility of renting 10,000 square feet of one of those warehouses for 5 years in a 5-year plan? I mean,
I don't think
because
we
it would be a really small revenue, and they are close enough, we could still almost use the yards that we have or whatever, and maybe move some of that. Have we looked at any of that
I
maybe?
don't think so. I think that's a great idea to explore.
Yeah, Cole and I were talking the other day of, alternative options. We have all these varying, concerns that have gone from like, oh man, that would be convenient and make the job faster and more efficient, to starting to become more of a need. That even little things like trying to budget for some of the site improvements of establishing in the yard, little by little, hey, this is some covered storage here. It's not part of the bigger project. It's piece by piece. We're doing some things here and there to try and safeguard the assets that we've all got exposed to elements. So I think various options, we've got to at least look at them.
I know a few years ago, we looked at that emissions building. We were hoping that we could access that, so a little bit, but probably not to the degree that we need to look at it. So I think that's good recommendation.
I don't want to get stuck here.
No, it's good recommendation. Let's,
Well, and I'll just piggyback on what Josh just said, because I think we have to start thinking outside the box on that and breaking it apart into little segments and try to figure out some things that might work. So I think Councilman Black's thought is right on line with what I've been thinking, is just how to break that 36 million down into a
More digestible.
more digestible, maybe manageable.
Yeah, we've got fuel pumps there, for example, that the state's now breathing down our necks on different requirements and how it's plumbed and how it's situated. Is that an opportunity? Or we move the fuel pumps to their future location now and alleviate that problem with the state and.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
good suggestion.
And I think it'd be helpful too, to see if within that space, if there's the ability to build maybe a less expensive structure for storage right next to it, and then build another bay or two, and then just kind of add on the good parts of that space to see if that could work. Versus building a whole brand new building.
I think we'll put our thinking hats on and go back and
Yeah.
take another look at it.
I just wanted to hear from you guys just to kind of understand the reality of it. I mean, I went in your kitchen a while ago and there's half the cupboards are broken. I'm like, this is crazy. We gotta get a new kitchen here. We gotta make even the work environment better. But I'm just wondering, because the bones of that facility looked pretty good. So I'm wondering how much can we expand off of the existing and make it a really great work environment for the employees and storing equipment.
Great, thank you.
Cole, sorry if it's okay. Didn't you, when I was talking with you, you mentioned like a $14 million
Yeah, so,
separate thing? Is
Yeah.
that something you guys have thought about? And
well, that's where it goes back. Yeah, sorry for over talking. That's where the 36 million, breaking it down into its pieces. So one of the pieces for the actual new structure was, anywhere from 14 to 19 million. And then you have the site work, which was another 6 to 10 million, and you had the rehab of the existing facility, which was, 4 to 5 million. And I think even within those components, I think you can even break it down even farther into, just different components. But I think all these things we need to go back and just look at. When we're looking at the whole campus of the facility, we have a master plan that we went through with CRSA. And that's helpful when we're deciding like, okay, let's put out, if we're gonna go with outside storage, we know where to locate it. And it won't be in the way of future, possible development, so. So that's why I think we just need to break it out into some smaller pieces, in my mind, it's just my opinion.
And part of that discussion is reevaluating, the intent was, we've got the fire station, the old fire station here that houses the rec department, and as we look at potentially rehabbing the existing structure, that would be moving those staff and operations and storage down with the parks department in the operations center, and kind of like part of the discussion of what happens with the city hall block in the future. But as we've evaluated that, but things are dynamic, like Dean said, we continue to reevaluate.
I'm not a doom and gloom guy, so this is really hard for me to go down the doom and gloom route, but you started the meeting by saying the feds have raised the rates again. And if you read about what they're trying to do, they flat out said, we want unemployment to go from 3.5% to 4.5%. They literally want 1% of the United States to not have a job because they want people to stop spending money, which is crazy. And the only way they can get people to stop spending money is to squeeze them out of a job, right? And so I think that the scary part about that is that they're just pushing the envelope because they're waiting for that to happen. And for us as a city, I think that we would want to wait until that happens before we bond for anything, before we go and build anything. And it'll be advantageous for us because we will be good credit. We'll be able to take advantage of when the rates drop again and get good bonds. And we'll be able to take advantage of the fact that there'll be 1% of the workforce out there without a job that'll be looking for jobs like the office center or, construction workers and construction companies, because all that's gonna squeeze out. Homes are gonna stop being built because people can't afford them. My house right now, I would pay like 2.5 times more for my mortgage if I financed it under current rates. So it's going to happen, and I think that, I don't know that right now is the time to build anything. That's why I probably prefer Mike's route of like seeing if we can find something to rent, because and that's why I say, and I believe there is somewhat of a revenue source possibly in the power side of things that you could maybe get into a lease on. And warehouse space usually in tilt-ups is usually fairly cheap, especially cheaper than bonding and building brand new. And it's just an option. We have an opportunity. There is some space close right now. And it's something to look at, but let's go.
Well, no, just the fact that when you started your 5-year plan, you had 5-year plans. Even when you started the 5-year plan, rates were nothing.
Right.
It was extremely cheap. And now it's way different.
Yeah. Our financing on the police stations at 1.6%.
Yeah.
We'd be paying 4 better.
4 or 5, yeah. And so that's huge.
Yeah.
I think just
Millions of dollars.
one last thing, whatever we do, because there was some discussion of should we move power somewhere else, or do this and that. I think ultimately it would be best if we could have as many employees working together as possible, just for the efficiency and sharing notes and working together and morale and things like that. And so
Still in each other's.
I would like to see.
Okay. We got-
Yeah, I think we're okay on this one.
So
So what we're saying is the budget does not include anything for the fire station or anything for the operations center.
That's right, and so they're, for the ops center, they're gonna look at options and how to break that out, and so we understand the better bite-sized chunks. We've already decided that we're good with the roof this year. You know, that's in the budget,
Yeah, and that's
that's a necessity,
necessity and it's use of fund balance.
and especially
We're-
as if we push stuff to the right.
Yeah, we're proposing to use reserve to do that.
Okay. Okay,
Anything on, Cole, anything else on the ops center?
No, I think the roof is just the major need. I mean, you can talk about the interior, about, you know, having some upgrades, but it still functions. The roof is not functioning.
I think we all agree with that.
Tar is dripping down.
Big nasty tar, that looks
Good
gross.
roof saves the building.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, okay, so then go back to the fire station. Are we saying we could shift everything 1 year to the right and discuss, I mean, we're just kicking the can, I mean, I hate to say, put it that way, but
Well, I was just gonna say that, I mean, how far do we wanna kick?
how far do we wanna kick the can? Yeah.
Reevaluate it again next
I
year.
think at least until we see what happens with bond rates and with building costs, because it's just like, I mean, the last thing we wanna do is go to take out bonds when everybody's getting pinched, in my opinion.
No,
Yeah.
John, I agree with that.
Yeah, so
Mike and I did this, 6 months ago, Mike? That cost on the fire station?
probably,
Yeah, something like
it
that.
may have
So,
been.
yeah.
No, I think the point is, it's not going to drop off the list.
Right, it'll
Yeah,
stay on, we
yeah,
don't have to do it
yeah.
this year.
You'll see it again next year.
Oh, no, I just, part of it is yeah, let's slide it 1 year, or, cause we can say right now, we could slide it 2 years and not be hurt. You know, it's worth discussing in a year, but I think we're gonna have the same discussion.
We might.
And,
Just hopefully better news. for everybody.
Okay,
yeah, with this
I
administration.
don't think so, yeah,
Yeah, it might be 2 years.
it will get worse.
improvements. These are mainly, there's a difference between infrastructure and improvements. Infrastructure are primarily utilities. Improvements are enhancements to existing facilities. We have the station alerting system, which is already programmed in there. That's on order. We've already signed a PO on that, so that's a commitment.
Yeah, can I say just one thing on that real quick? The problem with that, UCA, Communications Authority kicked the can down the road. We were supposed to go digital a few years ago, then they slipped it now to, so this October, if we don't have the new alerting system, we will not be alerted.
Yeah.
Because it's analog.
And again, you can see anything in blue is funded through impact fees.
Right,
And under the ramp category, those are restricted revenues. So the restricted uses of ramp.
Do you know those 100% funded by impact fees, or are they only partially funded by impact fees?
In blue, they're 100%.
So as we go down the line, should we, for 2024, I mean, should we just have a quick discussion on the ones that aren't highlighted in blue, just replace HVAC? And I don't want to get too nitpicky, but I'm trying to figure out like where can we save money since we're so far.
Again, that'd be my caution, is to get too far into the weeds, but it's your budget council, so as much information and detail as you want, we'll give you.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that HVAC, would that be considered a critical need, or is that a need in the next 3 years, or would that tie into?
It's just all wrong all the time. Those units are 30 years old, so it's like the furnace in your home.
Yeah.
Well, 30, we're beyond its life expectancy. And so it's just, when it goes, it goes. And so we're just trying to be ahead of when those critical things fail.
Mm-hmm.
And so we replaced 2 of the HVAC units at the ops center this last year.
Okay.
With some of the overhead, and so, in the fire station. And so where we get hurt is when those go down and we have to do a complete replace, and then we don't have the budget, so then we're trying to. So are they currently working? Yes, but they are.
In an emergency situation though, we would be able to replace it quickly, right?
Well, we'd have to get funding from somewhere. We'd have to come to council and say, hey, these went down. We don't have the, $10,000 a piece.
So technically we could approve
But that
it.
means you wait for a council meeting and then you wait for the repairs to happen and then it's
Yeah.
months down the road.
And so we have a very robust,
In the middle of the winter, that's pretty tough to do.
Yeah.
we have a robust, preventive maintenance plan, and so this is the recommendation from our HVAC contractor that does our preventive maintenance.
That is
just we need to be.
That is time.
Yeah.
This is part of almost is part of those necessary things like the roof that you're budgeting for to be able to keep using that building and not have to.
If I'm picking one or the other, the roof is the A critical,
Mhm.
HVAC, it's still
Only when it
functioning,
happens.
so it's just,
I think it goes back to our discussion last week when we talked about capital, the need to have a replacement schedule and to stay ahead of the maintenance curve.
Yeah.
Because
That's
the
important,
longer you
yeah.
let things go, the more expensive they are to maintain.
Yeah.
I think that's our concern there, obviously.
yeah, and going forward, we're gonna start seeing a whole lot more HVAC replacement systems that are gonna become a lot more expensive. We have the PD that's going on, it'll be almost hitting 10 years. When we get to replacing that system, it's gonna be a nightmare.
So that's probably 5-10 years
Probably
out.
5 to 10 years, but we just gotta stay on top of
Yeah,
it.
and I understand
So,
that.
anyway.
It's just, yeah, we have to figure out a
I
way
get it, I do.
to
So,
try to bring
I
down
get it.
the budget a little bit.
This doesn't bring down our
Right.
spend though, because this is capital, this is just money out of the bank, because it's one-time expense.
Well, it brings down the deficit this year.
This is part of.
This is part of that 2.4 million.
This is part of
Yeah.
it.
That 35,000 would be, yes.
So
So
we could lower that amount, but
Yeah, you could, instead of doing 2, we do 1, or, there's different options to consider. We're just showing that these are the needs and, yeah.
And then, of course, the other gorilla in the room is the Trappers Field.
And we talked about what we do to minimum.
yeah,
minimize
well, let's
that.
minimize that for sure.
And maybe explain your plan this year, Cole, on that.
So the 3.8 million, this is the engineer's estimates, which is just crazy. And in the park, really, the design is it's not complicated. It's not very, we've got amenities that we think are needed. So our thought is this year is let's go back with our design team and see if there's a way that we can phase it that makes sense.
Right.
Because it's got to be done in a way that makes sense. Otherwise, we're going in, doing stuff and then tearing stuff back out. So we want to go back and rethink and say, okay, if we had, $1 million, what could we do with $1 million of our park impact fee? How could we do that? So I think for this year, our plan is to not do anything in FY '24, which takes us to the agreement that the city council signed in 2018 that the south side be developed in 3 years, the north side developed in 5 years. That 3.8 million is the north side. I guess if we got into a disagreement with the HOA that we inherited it from, we have started development, we've started design. There really isn't any,
There's no
There's no
definition of
penalties.
that, yeah.
So,
so they-
question on that, would it be possible to kick Trappers Field down to 2025 when the Pioneer Park bond is paid off? Then we'd have a revenue stream that would work
Yes.
for that.
Then let's do that.
that's our.
That's your plan.
Is that the 3.8 million?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I don't feel comfortable in good use of money, even doing anything right now, because I think that number is just.
So high,
Just
3.8 million.
And Mike, to your point, it is impact fee eligible.
Yes.
So we can use impact fee money.
And that's why I said you could kick it, because with that paid off, you'd be collecting impact fees, it would be impact eligible, then you'd have a revenue stream that you could actually bond for at that time.
Correct.
Okay.
So that may be the approach, is maybe you go ahead and make all the improvements and do that through a revenue bond and pay that bond back with collected impact fees, like we
Yes.
did with Pioneer Park.
But that would kick it down the road to 2025, and then it just goes away, and we'll take the ramifications of what those people have to say, and I think it's questionable. I think we've already started.
We have.
So,
So.
Like Dean, would you make a note to give me at least, of the things this year, what is an ongoing expense, and then what things are one-time purchases that go as part of that
I think everything you're seeing in that column that is.
This is the only page that has one-time expenses.
The previous one.
No, these are not, well,
Got the
I
next
take
page.
that
You
back.
understand what I mean?
Yeah,
Like, I mean, I know last year what we did, basically where my head's going is last year what we did is we used, instead of doing truth and taxation, we used some of our rainy day funds to make up our deficit. Part of the problem with that was that we made up the deficit for things that are ongoing expenses, like 5% or 6% COLA. If there are some things, however, that are one-time expenses that we have this year that we could use rainy day things that aren't gonna be ongoing expenses, that might be something I would like to look at.
Yeah,
for
some
those.
of these things here are one-time expenses. I think it'll really, when we start talking vehicles, those are capital expenses that I would be comfortable using fund balance for capital because it's a one-time expense.
Yeah.
And not part of the operating, we can talk about it.
Cause I mean, I look at Chief's 116 grand here, if that's part of our $2 million deficit that we're dealing with right now, in a pinch right now where everybody's struggling, you know, I'd be like, okay, yeah, it's one time we're buying this thing, let's use our savings rather than
Yeah.
hit neighbors and people with extra taxes.
I think that's a great consideration. My concern, as we've expressed, is using fund balance. We have too much,
Oh.
and using fund balance for operating.
Right, we don't wanna do,
Right.
we've done that, and that's why we're in here.
I get it, and I'm just saying, you're talking operating though is ongoing,
Like the
right?
bulk of these are one time. Capital's kind of one time. in
So I'm
nature.
saying, give me a list of one times.
So it's pretty much the operations section is well, these are the one times.
Capital's pretty much one time.
The operations section is like 95% operating. There are a few built-in one-time costs, like if that's the initial year, we're starting a software, there's a little bit of one-time built into that in the operations section.
I like that.
Yeah, I've been thinking that.
I
too.
agree with
I
that.
would like to see
But I
that.
mean, if
John,
you're-
when we finish up today, I hope to say, here's our path forward.
Okay,
And part of that path forward is doing the very thing you're talking about.
okay, great.
And that would help
I will-
the public to understand as well if we do go through truth and taxation. I think specifically highlighting that it's for the ongoing costs.
Okay, let's
Okay, who wants
go on to ambulance.
Hey, Dean, I have a question though. Can we use, fire department impact fees for design?
For the design? Oh, absolutely, yeah. I was thinking for this learning system, no, but, yeah. Okay, this is infrastructure, drains and utilities. Maybe I'll just, what questions do you have?
This is everything except for power. Power is its own slide.
And I think we talked a little bit about.
Yeah, we kind of went over this.
About Crestwood and 200 North, that there are a lot of moving parts there that are related. Not only road improvements that go with that, but utility improvements that have to take place as well. And so you can see how they're interconnected. You can see the road costs, and then you can go down and see the utility costs that go with those projects. I don't know, Josh, do you wanna
I
say
think we're
anything about?
hoping that someone comes in lower than $4.5 million to put in some pipe.
That would be amazing.
So that is one of the things that we were hoping these could clear up for us
You
today.
did circle that.
Because it just seemed $4.5 million to put a pipe from Main Street to 1100 East.
There's 3 pipelines,
Oh, so there's 3 pipelines.
two transmission lines that are large diameter and at main feed. So Crestwood and 200 North are the only means of central Kaysville and west Kaysville getting any water. So all of the tanks have dedicated transmission lines that send water throughout the various areas of Kaysville. But the costs in general are just insane. We opened bids 2 days ago to replace a small section between Arby's and the IHC Instacare. So that was
200 yards.
$820,000.
Holy shit. Change jobs.
Yeah.
So that's.
Do not let your kids go to college, tell them to buy a trackhoe and a dump truck.
From your opinion, are those prices inflated? It's just, that's what it is right now, the going rate?
Prices are inflated, but it's also, there's so much construction going on. You know, contractors are, well, if I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna have to squeeze it in here and.
Because we have
That
so
means
many
I'm gonna-
other,
Exactly.
Highway 89 and the West Davis Corridor.
Exactly, and I don't see that slowing down.
Yeah.
You know, that, we've seen some things slightly decrease on certain pipe materials. But I think there will be a slight adjustment, but a lot of these prices, as we're talking to vendors, are, you know, you might not see continued increases, but you'll see prices potentially just hanging out where they are
They're not gonna go.
for a while, and then everything will catch up to those prices, and then they would continue to climb again.
They will.
Then, I don't wanna, then the question I have, is this the right time to even have this in a capital improvements deal? I mean, is this something that we can kick the can down the road and take advantage of when John says prices, interest rates go up,
I'm no
construction
financial
jobs go away?
analyst.
I think,
That's what I'm asking, is this one of those, it's a hypercritical project that if we don't do it, nobody's gonna have drinking water, or if we kick it 5 years down the road, where would we be?
we can kick anything down the road. And that's probably everything that we talk about today. 200 North is easily the most trafficked road in Kaysville, and connects all of the arterial facilities of West Davis Corridor, I-15, Highway 89. And the condition of it, just from a functional classification, driving that road,
It's awful.
it's awful.
Yeah.
We wouldn't ever want to touch the surface of 200 North without addressing the utilities. The sewer district has contacted us. We've got changes that we need to make in short order to our sewer in 200 North. Irrigation is close to finishing their changes in 200 North. Same with Crestwood. One of the main components of these two projects with 200 North and Crestwood is safety. Active transportation facilities, so things like bike lanes, sidewalks that don't currently exist. Crestwood, I bet if we looked at the data from the PD, we probably had at least a dozen accidents on Crestwood just at Brookshire. As that comes down, we've added additional warning signage there. That is the first road that we plow in every single storm. And you'll see that road plowed potentially 5 or 6 times in every single storm. So one of the things we're looking at there is, from a safety aspect, are the facilities needing changes there? And then the big driving concern to me is water. If we were to have, you know, like the high pressure fuel lines, if something catastrophic happened there, West Kaysville and Central Kaysville have no water. If we have an earthquake, all those pipes, those large diameter transmission lines are asbestos concrete. So they're very brittle.
Yeah.
And we don't love asbestos, period. But if something happened, we're hoping that there's a large supply of bottled water for Central and West Kaysville.
Well, I'm hoping that we don't do this project until we get West Davis and 89 done, because they certainly don't want a brand new road with all those big trucks driving up and down.
So West Davis Corridor will finish probably January to February of next year. Highway 89, maybe the latter part of this year, November, December. So yeah, we'll be working on the design for these two projects for the next 18 to 24 months.
And I don't think we should slow down anything dealing with that type of infrastructure, power and water. What about the infrastructure upgrade, Mutton Hollow, 1.6 million? Is that something that?
That's current.
Well, you gotta look at this.
Oh, that's current. Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
That's been done.
Yeah.
No, okay.
Yeah, the thing to keep in mind on the water is that's potentially a financing that we're going to have to look
Yeah.
at
And I don't think we should,
through bonding method.
That's my point. We have no revenue source for that $4.5 million.
what about the 8 million, the connector road project? Is there any way to do it in a smaller segment,
Well,
6 million?
That's all funded from other
It's
sources.
all funded?
Probably should have highlighted that.
Okay, I didn't see it highlighted, so.
That's all money coming from
We're
the county.
building that.
Okay.
We're not really paying for that.
We should have an orange color
goodness.
or something for.
Well, that's FY 25, so it's just.
Well, I think the point is though, we're gonna start design.
Right.
Yeah, we have
We
started
need to.
Yeah.
design, it started probably 3 weeks ago on both of these projects.
And that'll give us a better idea of the total cost as well.
And then design doesn't expire over 2
Yeah,
or 3.
but at the worst case scenario, if it is pushed, we have plans sitting on a shelf, that are ready to go. So, I mean,
I think
I think the general answer is, do I feel like this is like critical now? Yes, I do think it's absolutely
I
critical.
think that's one of the most critical projects we have in the entire city.
Okay, so the current 200,000 is C road funds, right? Or what is that?
It's a combination between C road, and road utility.
Utility and active transportation.
Yeah.
And the $200,000, we probably should have highlighted that one. We think that one's probably eligible for impact fees as well on the one haul.
Oh, good.
Okay,
That
let's
doesn't sound
look at electric utility. Ryan? Again, everything in blue is impact fee. The two big things going on are the substation improvements that we're doing. Transformers are on order, they've been ordered, and they're about $1 million a piece. But again, impact fee eligible, and we think timeline, what do you think, Brian?
We should be getting the first transformer this fall. And then, cause we expedited that for the Schick substation, we've been working with the manufacturer. Me and the substation tech are hoping to fly out, to do the inspection on that, the quality inspection on that this fall. And, hopefully have delivery by September, October-ish. And then, the second transformer for the Burton sub won't be until next year. It'll be into probably mid-year to fall of 25. So.
And tell us what that's going to do for us. Tell us what it's going to do for us by making those improvements.
Yeah, it's, right now, we're pushing our transformers over 100%. One of our transformers at peak load in the summer. Last summer, we were able to redistribute loads throughout the city so that all of our transformers were operating, substation transformers were operating below 100%. But if any given one was to go out or have a complication, we would not have the ability to provide power to our city, to sections of our city, because we would be so far overloaded, we just wouldn't have the capacity to do that. These two substations growth are gonna make it so that at any given time, we can take any transformer, substation transformer in our city offline and still, even at peak loads, and still have the capacity to run our city at full operation without stress. It's also gonna provide for several more years, many more years worth of growth. The projected grow out of Kaysville, we may have to upgrade some of the transformers that we currently have, but it's not gonna be a rebuild like this. It's not gonna be, this should cover us in many regards and many aspects. So it's really something that's been this can got kicked down the road way longer than it should have. Way, way longer. So we're kind of in a situation now where we're just kind of hoping and praying nothing occurs until they get here, and then we'll be in a really good place.
The transformer in the fall.
Yeah, the transformer, we're not gonna do away with the existing transformers, we're just adding to them. So, whole new bays, whole new infrastructure, whole new build and everything to our substation.
Did you say we already have another transformer on the order?
Yeah, we ordered 2.
Okay, is that sufficient, or do you need to order more this time?
Those 2 will do the trick. So, yeah,
Those are the 850,000 in the impact fee.
yes,
Okay.
yeah.
The increase in power rates, how is that looking? Because I know, what was it, 5%?
Yep.
And ideally, it probably should be 10%. How are you looking with that 5% increase? in regards to-
Well, there's a lot of things that I'm working with right now. One of the biggest things I'm talking about for this house right now, one of the more popular infrastructure restructures that are going on is called a power purchasing adjustment clause. And basically what that allows you to do is to fluctuate your rate throughout the year, whether it be monthly, quarterly, annually, however you want to do it, but it allows you to fluctuate your rate with a variable. So you maintain your constant rate that we have now, but then we have a variable on our billing system that would fluctuate according to what the power rate costs are. So the power costs are, Lehigh's implemented it, Hire has it, Brigham, Washington City, a lot of cities, and I'm looking into how exactly that would look for Kaysville, along with demand and time of use and everything. So I haven't really sat down with Dean at all. In fact, this is probably the first time he's heard of me even talk about this. But that's one of the things I'm highly exploring. Just 2 nights ago, I spent probably an hour and a half on the phone with a couple other cities, discussing just that option and what that would look like. Their successes, their thoughts on it, their feelings. Brigham City's been doing it for years. Has had this.
Does this involve the generation facility that you mentioned?
No.
Yeah, okay.
No,
This is
the
different.
generation facility doesn't have anything to do with that exact, the fluctuation rates or whatever here in the future. So the generation facility is one of those things that we're just, we're losing resources, and we're just looking into the option if we were to get our own generation, what that would look like for us, having our own ability to produce the needs and the difference from what we purchase on the open market from our current resources.
And I would like to explore that and start seeing some numbers, and what that would look like, to get ahead of that, because I think that's quite
Yeah,
critical.
you're looking at probably about $22 million for the 415.
Look, you just saved us 20 million. I said it was, last week I said it was 40 million, so
Yeah,
look what you did.
well.
Good job, Brian.
There you go. I'd have to go back and look at my numbers because I can't remember if the 20 million is for each, because we want to do 2 7.5 megawatt generators. And I can't remember, it might have been 20 million for just one of the 7.5, so 40 would be correct.
I just guessed.
But I can't remember if it was what it was, if it was them combined or separate.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay, yeah.
let's go on. I know,
We're gonna lose Chief and Perry at what time, 10:30?
Yeah, we need to,
yeah, just maybe scan this list again for equipment. If you have any specific questions, they're not huge items, but if you have any questions, let us know.
Blender for cold, what are you? You want a blender? You making like smoothies or something? I'm just kidding. Alright.
Well, through 24, I just keep thinking like, okay, what are constituents, what are my neighbors gonna ask, like if we go through the truth and taxation process? And, I don't wanna get too nitpicky because everyone knows what they need. But if, we get people that look at this list, what are they gonna say when we ask for a pretty good increase in taxes. And so through that lens, I just kind of want to go through it. Like, what are the absolute musts? What can we move down the line? Like the 15,000 for gym equipment. I know it's only 15,000, but how critical is that? I just looking at this, I know it's important if it's on this list.
If you need to move it down, that, you know, it's like everything else everybody else has said here.
Yeah.
I mean, we have some issues with it, the treadmills skip when people are on them, but if we have to not use those, you know, then we won't use those. All the capital things I've put in for that, or building, or cars, I feel like the city made an investment in that building, I wanna take care of it.
Yeah.
Does that have to happen this year? No, I can paint next year, we can replace things next year. So if we wanna move those things down, or if that helps the budget, I'm happy to do that.
I think that would be good,
I think
especially on
the exception of cars, I do not want to get out of the rotation for cars with 30 plus officers. You get out of the rotation 1 year, I mean, you really get behind.
Yeah.
No, I
Yeah.
agree 100%. I mean, that year that we didn't buy cars so we could buy air packs for fire. I mean, I'm happy to do that, but what it did was subsequent years, we have to buy more cars because we aged our
Yeah,
fleet by not
yeah.
buying those 4 cars, but
He's been sticking his boot in all of you ever since.
for the record, it was before my time. I love bringing that up. And it was well worth the money, so I can bring it up there. But
So we find other things like that, we can continue to poke each other.
But my point with cars too is, a brand new car doesn't do me any good if I don't have a cop that can drive it. If I can't keep people,
Yeah.
then
Right,
all
it's
this
just-
doesn't mean anything to
Yeah.
me. So if that helps, you know, fund our people, then.
As you talk about people, I mean, like gym equipment, I think it's good as you look to answer questions. That's used like citywide. I have a ton of my guys that use the gym at the PD.
Oh, see, I didn't realize that. I
Yeah.
thought it was just.
You know, they go during the day, they choose to use their lunch break to go exercise there.
So why there versus Boston? Because I know that a lot of the fire folks use
I
Boston.
have guys that don't wanna be around a lot of people, just from like a health perspective.
Yeah.
And they gotta pay.
gyms. Yeah, and there's paying.
Do they have access to Boston as well?
They used to.
We do a $20 reimbursement.
Okay.
So if they sign up for a gym, we'll reimburse them $20 a month.
I just want to go through, and it'd be nice to hear, like, is this an absolute must? Why, how will it negatively impact, and just quickly go through it? If we could shave off 100,000, that'd be great. What are we gonna tell the public when we go through this?
You want to wait till we finish the whole discussion and then?
We could do that, yeah.
I think that, and see where we are.
Yeah.
Okay, to stay on schedule, we're gonna look quickly at vehicles. And again, this is trying to stay ahead of the maintenance curve on vehicles. I think it's important to replace vehicles on a regular schedule. You mentioned police, that's what, 4 vehicles, chief?
Yeah, that's 4 patrol cars.
I have a question on that, I don't wanna, because. I will ask my question after you finish.
No, I think that's it. I think because we've talked to.
So, because we talked about the ambulance chief, because we know we just got a brand new one, we got a year-old one. Do we absolutely have to have another right now, $432,000? That was a big cost.
Well, we can, what Gene and I talked about is we can kick that can down the road because it's a 24 to 28 month bill.
We don't
And
have to pay for it till
that'll
we get
put
it.
that ambulance at 12 years old.
Which one at 12?
Our third one, it'll put it at
And what do
12
you
years old.
use the third one for? I'm not
We
quite
use
sure.
it for maintenance and backup, when stuff goes into maintenance, and then we're up to 25% overlap now, so we have 2 ambulances out
I
25% of
know
the
that,
time.
yeah, or that part, but I'm just wondering, that's a big one-time hit. If we could move down, that would help in the fleet.
Well, that's what I mean,
I think we're talking about maybe shifting that.
And we're paying off more.
To this schedule, pay off one of the
Yes.
ambulances.
Yeah,
Get back onto.
We are gonna
It's on a lease purchase schedule. We're
yeah, that's what
looking
we
at.
talked about that the other day in our meeting.
And the other one was, Chief, you gotta help me out on this, Saul, because, I really pushed for this fleet thing. And and part of that was buying vehicles that I knew that we could resell. And F-150s are an absolute proof of that you can buy them, keep them for a year or two and sell them and almost cost you nothing to have vehicles. But my understanding is you bought some electric vehicles. And electric vehicles are, from what I'm hearing, are absolutely worthless after you use them for a while because the battery costs are so expensive and they devalue really fast.
I've heard the same thing, and I was told that there was some consternation last week about electric vehicles. And I'll be honest, it's a little bit frustrating to me because the direction I was given was that council wanted electric vehicles purchased.
Previous to us.
And so we kicked that can down the road. We resisted it for a couple years. But when I'm consistently told by my boss, I want you to try to find ways to buy electric vehicles, I kind of feel like I have to try to do that.
Yeah, the previous council had like two or three that used electric vehicles.
Yeah, so we ordered electric vehicles. We also tried, as a trial, we also ordered pickups, the F-150s, and the year that we did it, we couldn't get them. The dealership couldn't get them. So what they did next year was they showed up. Next year when I didn't have money or support for it, they showed up and said, "Hey chief, we got 17 F-150s here for you." I said, "I can't, you're a year late, I can't do it." I talked to Shane about it, and Shane was frustrated too that we couldn't get them that year that we had the support for it. But we did pick up one pickup, so we do have one of those that we had money for that's
I understand it went through a year, you had one, went through a year and bought a new one, and the cost of the city was like $1,500 for a year.
It was almost like having.
And that's minimal, and I don't know what your electric cars are costing, but they're not gonna be worth anything. Really, they're not. And so I'm just hoping if we're gonna get on this fleet thing, that we actually, because now I feel like we're going behind again in our money, what we tried to build up for the fleet, we just lost.
We got a little sidetracked on the police department. I think it's working great in the other departments. I think Cole and Brian and Josh would say the same.
It's
I think
been a lifesaver from an operational standpoint, whether it's snow plowing, water leaks, even just general daily operations and maintenance. We were regularly, weekly dealing with this vehicle's down. So whatever it was going to be used for, scrambles, move something around, snow plowing, each truck that goes down, every single storm, without fail, we have at least one vehicle go down, and that's gonna add 3+ hours to everybody else's time. 3+ hours that we're paying people overtime to be out there. So yeah, this has been like life-changing for us in that regard, and letting off the gas pedal with that would be absolutely killer.
So do we need to decide as a council to let off the gas with electric vehicles?
I think we already did.
Personally, I hope that.
I think Saul got the message.
Okay.
Let's buy things we know are good resale vehicles on the market.
I think the reasoning that council, and I'm not advocating,
Okay, we have
but there
5
was a
presidents.
discussion of, we own our own power company, and we see what we spend on fuel, like almost half of my maintenance fund for vehicles is fuel. And their discussion was, do we have an opportunity owning our own power company where electric vehicles could be advantageous to the city? And that was kind of the, hey, if you guys have an opportunity to get EVs, try them out, see how they go.
And there still might be some opportunities. I think, for community development, that
I was
might
gonna say for admin
be
type
a good option.
cars, I think they'd be great.
Yeah, we ordered an electric F-150 to use as an admin role in our department, and waited 13 months for it, and the week before it was supposed to be delivered, they called and said it's canceled.
You know what I'd rather see? I'd rather see us buy a Honda Accord for admin, for people the staff that do not need a truck.
Honda doesn't do food.
Does Toyota do food?
Those cars last forever.
They do, you can ride them.
So our admin are people that are carrying tools with them.
I think that's.
Okay.
Armed.
We
Yeah,
don't
that would
want
be different.
to last forever.
Right, we just
I don't
want them to
wanna
be
make
able
any
to tell you.
sense.
Right.
These are the weeds.
Yeah,
Okay, let's get going.
let's get out of the weeds. Maybe just one comment on this. You see community development, that's where those departments, we've gone back and Linda said, our guys can wait a year probably and not buy anything this year. So that's where we've taken a look at our replacement schedule and said we can make some adjustments. And so anyway, I think departments have really made an effort to try to get where we need to be. Okay, we're gonna start.
The ambulance is gonna shift to the right, is that? Okay.
We're still gonna order.
We just don't have the paper.
Not only shift to the right, do a lease purchase, right?
I don't have control over that, Mike, but okay.
Well, negotiate that lease. Negotiate a lease purchase.
Yes.
Yeah, that would.
I know you're thinking.
That would be our.
10,000 miles a year.
You get 10,000.
4,200 down.
Pull over to park it.
Only,
You can walk and take off your shoes when you get in
only
the car.
$8,000.
Okay, we're gonna.
Oh,
Yeah, I can-
Okay,
What?
let's
You
get
wanna,
some.
you wanna take a 2-minute break?
Yes.
Okay.
No?
Need a different breed.
I'm gonna take that 2-minute break at 10:30 when the chief leaves late.
Are we pausing the,
I
don't
would,
have control right now.
you do or you don't?
I do not.
You wanna do that, chief? I know you have to leave at 10:30.
Yeah,
But it's
whatever.
probably important to your, okay.
I'm okay if we keep
Let's
going.
keep-
People-
let's-
Okay.
let's-
I'd wait till 10:30 just so he can.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, last week we talked about a couple things. We talked about the human resources schedule. And we discussed that departments have outlined what they think their needs are going forward as far as personnel increases. I'll get to that schedule.
Hey, team. While you guys are pulling this up, bear with me. I don't talk very much, but I've written down some thoughts that I just have to get out before my brain explodes. So hang tight, it should be a couple minutes. But I just want, as we look at this section of the budget, that we should frame this conversation, not in terms of what's the least we can do, but in terms of what people need to survive. I don't think COLA is a magical number that someone pulls out of the sky to extort money out of cities. I think that's ridiculous. But I am, probably one of the youngest people in the room. And while I know that means I have a ton to learn from you all, like every time you guys open your mouths, everyone in this room, I think, holy cow, why am I not thinking as well as them? But I also know that it means that I understand what our younger workforce is thinking. And right now, part of what we're thinking is we've been told our whole lives that Social Security won't be a thing for us. We have to go where the money is so that we can save money now and protect ourselves later because there's nothing left for us, supposedly. I don't know if that's true, but in the end, that's the mentality. So yeah, we will probably lose people if we don't pay them something competitive. Things are different now, even than they were a few years ago. We're staring down, as John pointed out, the barrel of uncertainty that comes with looming economic issues. And our employees, just like everyone else in the city, deserve to have some certainty about the future. Sorry, a little longer. I've been speaking, I think it's speaking out of both sides of our mouths to say, our city workers are so great. Look what they've done at Orchard Ridge. Look how they stay up all night to plow. And then to come back into meetings like this and say things like, or at least not consider paying them fair and competitive wages. Well, I don't think we can have it both ways. We can't say you're awesome and then say, we don't want to pay you what you deserve. I've been out with our firefighters, our police officers, our public works employees. They get called out on holidays. They work on weekends. They work through the night. They witness the horrors of crime and death. And, like we had a power outage on Easter last year, and they left their families to go to that. They plow on Christmas. They plow on Christmas Eve. And I heard that some of our workers don't have enough money to fill their car up with gas to go camping and use their time off that we have given them. I mean, we got to do better for our people. I've been asked a lot because my husband works for the government, how much his COLA was last year. It was 4%, and that was huge for us. Like, we were so excited.
First time since the 70s.
Yeah, and I was so grateful. In previous years, we get 1% to 2%. But in that instance, I feel like I need to embrace, the phrase that he used in the military, you can embrace the suck, but you don't have to feel like everyone else has to embrace it as well. So just because sometimes things have been crappy for us doesn't mean that we need to make it that way for everyone else. So then kind of my last few things, well, anyway, I think losing skilled and passionate workers who've built the environment that we prize in our departments will only force us to give subpar care and services to our residents. We could say, yeah, if you want to leave, leave, but we will be much worse off in the following ways. The help we hire for the cut rate wages that we'll be willing to pay will be less than what our residents deserve. We'll continually be stuck in a rut of training new people who will then leave to go to jobs that will pay them for the skills that we've paid for them to have. We'll pay expensive training costs every time we lose a skilled employee, which in the end, I think will even out to more than what we would pay. And then, as far as proof of that, Chief Erickson is experiencing difficulty hiring qualified applicants. Chief Oberg's had difficulty since the George Floyd riots. Parks and Rec has had difficulty since 2019. We could look at the teaching sector and see that no one wants to be a teacher. I mean, it sucks. You get paid nothing and people are really mean to you. Loyalty doesn't go one way. We have a responsibility to our residents to be responsible with their tax money, and we're doing them a disservice if we don't use their money wisely and getting them those intangible things that a fair wage can pay. I think if we nickel and dime this thing, the only thing we're going to do is come out a penny wise and a pound foolish. And then just one last story is when my father passed away, he had an illness that was similar to ALS. Sorry. And I don't talk about it much because it was horrific to watch. But before he lost the ability to speak and walk, it was apparent that he was going to need wheelchair accessibility in his home. So the summer before we saw this needing to happen, we went to my parents and said, please let us clean out your garage so that you can put a ramp in, so that you can leave the house. Because this winter, you will not be able to leave the house. But at the time, it just wasn't an emergency. And they said, no, well, in the end, he spent half the winter stuck in his house, unable to do what he loved, which was going and visiting people. And then in the middle of winter, I had to freeze my butt off to go and clean out his garage for him, which of course I was willing to do. But I see this where we're at right now in Kaysville as we need to look to the future and not just we need to bite the bullet and kind of move forward with this and not just look at it as, well, where can we cut? Because we're doing a disservice not only to our employees, but to our residents. Sorry, so that was probably way longer than it needed to be, but
That was great.
I haven't been able to sleep for like 2 weeks, so it needed to come out.
And it
So
was
thank
great.
you.
No, it's true. I think
Good
it was
job,
great.
Abby,
I
good
just,
job.
I guess I'm struggling to understand though where the feeling, I mean, the letter and then the Facebook post, I don't understand where this feeling is coming from that we aren't considering.
Well, I think that people have listened to some of our meetings, they've listened to some of our discussions. And part of our job is to be, it is to be responsible, right? It's to maintain the budget, but part of that is responsibility to our community to provide the services, the quality, the care, the level of professionalism that they're expecting. And we can't do that if we lose people. So
Yeah,
we've got to be
part
able
of the
to
meeting,
keep
I mean, I've been in these meetings, I've never gotten the impression that.
I think that we've had discussions, is 8% too high, is a 3% they've heard those kinds of conversations.
And those are fair conversations that we need to have.
Right.
And I think that's a fair assessment of you, but I think people are just passionate at what they do. They know council is doing what they need to do. They don't feel that they're getting wronged or anything. I think they're just getting ahead of it and they're getting excited about it.
Well, and they're looking and talking to other cities. Employees, I had no idea how big this world is, but employees, they talk to each other. I was at a mayor's meeting thing last night and we're all saying, okay, we need to start holding our rates. This is getting ridiculous. But all of the employees talk to their counterparts in different cities. They just,
Well, they go to the water conference
and they
go to
hear.
the trainings.
Well, all of our jobs get sent out
Yep.
statewide.
Right,
to all of
everybody
us.
sees
We
them,
all
so.
know what everybody's making.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a fishbowl, obviously. The minute Syracuse does something, we know about it.
Right.
I appreciate it, Abby's comments. I do too. There's something really unique about Kaysville.
Yeah.
And, how we're all together on these things and the employees, it's just amazing. I think we want to send a message that our employees are the most valuable resource we have. And yeah, sorry.
Well, and I think that's true almost anywhere you go, in anything you do, is the employees are the most valuable resource you have. Now, if I'm going to war, I guess I want an F-35, but, with the bombs, and I gotta have to fly them. So, but then it comes down to the physical realities is, what can you, at what cost?
Sure.
Because if, you know, I know what property taxes from the county did last year, you know, and bumping up like that. And we're gonna have to do it again. You know, I mean, I think we're gonna, to some extent, we're gonna have to do it this year. And, so sometimes you know, and we understand, you know, like John, what you said earlier, that where we are with the nation and the fiscal realities that are happening, the cost is much higher this year than it would have been just 2 years ago. And, so what can we afford? And I look at the ask for people. I understand that. I mean, I've been in those situations where I need a new, you know, X number of people. So, but I'm also then looking at the raises for the folks we have. So what's more important? Is it, the new hires, or is it keeping the people we have and making them more competitive so they don't leave? But I don't know that you can have both.
And I think as staff, we've said, these are the needs, but in our view, the most important thing is our current employees. That's why not one of these things is included as part of the budget.
Yeah.
Okay, they're needs.
And you mentioned that last
There's
time.
absolute needs, but there's a greater need, as you say, for our existing employees.
Well,
Oh, sorry.
no, I was just gonna say, I appreciate that the employees are willing to do that. They're willing to do even more if they can know that what they're doing is valuable and valued by us. I think that there's a message that we're sending. In 2021, we did have a truth in taxation hearing, but we held the rate. That was my memory of that. And we used fund balance to offset and plug some holes, right? 2022, last year, we didn't do truth in taxation. We also used fund balance. This year, and actually it was started in 2020, I think, where we were starting to use fund balance. And then this year, you know, we've got a situation where we've got a bigger hole, but it's because we didn't incrementally make decisions the last couple of years to prepare for the future. And so I would just hope that we would make a decision based upon what would really work for the city moving forward. And then we can have a little bit of confidence in saying, okay, this is our plan. And then we don't have a big jump in future years because it's incremental and we're doing it. And we're, in addition to doing this, we've looked at power transfers. We've looked at that. We decided not to do it, but we can still have discussions about that, how to move forward with that if we ever decided to. We're trying to do economic development within the city. So I think we've got a good thing to be able to tell people. We can tell them, look, we are trying. We've looked at all of these different options. But if we don't take care of the people, like everybody knows, then we have nothing to offer as a city. And that's our job. To be responsible, but also to be responsible with the assets within the city, which are the employees, so.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off that too, I think a lot of our discussion, you know, last year I talked about the fleet and who drives cars home and the gas. And I heard that probably upset a bunch of employees. And in no way, shape or form, I want to upset any employees or make it harder to do their job. As a council, we just need to flush everything out so that we can be accountable to the people and the people that pay taxes. And if there is a situation where an employee doesn't feel valued, I think all of us on the council, we understand that 100%. We want to keep our talented employees. We want to make sure they're compensated well. And, you know, going back to the point that Perry made, yeah, we could keep adding more employees, or where can we actually increase budgets to the employees that we have and salaries and things like that. And so in no way, shape or form it hurts the thought of any employee feeling like as a council, we don't have their back. And I want to be made aware of that as well, because that's very important. So just for everyone to take back to.
Sorry about that
we've
little
got
sidetrack.
No, I think we've got to do a better job
communicating with our elected officials on potential or actual concerns. And I don't want elected officials to feel like, staff are like frothing at the mouth, voodoo dolls of all of you.
My back is hurt.
I get it.
Has nothing to do with
But
fear.
I think where like the like concern and there are letters and it is talked about, like, if I wanna know a question, I wasn't able to watch council, I can ask my guys, cause they watch every second. If I did have a question, this morning I asked one of my guys about, some other cities, and within 30 minutes, this is, how the department's set up, this is what they're doing. They do have a ton of information, and I think where some of those feelings are coming from is, we have all the talk of deficit. There's cost of materials are going up, and I think staff and elected officials are super proud of the level of service that we provide the community. And I don't think anybody in this room wants to change that level of service. And so as they're like, well, if there's certain things that we can't afford, and we've got to continue to buy the materials, and we've got to continue to provide the service, like that, the only other option is me. And the other thing that I want to reiterate is I have never got the sense, not just from the Public Works Department, but from other staff, that any concerns or discussion about wages are about, I want more, or this isn't fair because that city did this. Abby hit on it. We found really unusually large amount of unused PTO with some of our staff last year, and as we started talking about it, guys like, yeah, I typically do this big hunting trip with my dad and friends, and I couldn't afford to put fuel in the truck, and like I appreciate the importance of, you've got to ask the questions, you've got to look at it, but it's not I want more, this isn't fair, just, hey, we would never hesitate in a moment's notice to drop what we're doing and go help the residents. But people being unable to pay their bills, I don't want it to feel like a hostage negotiation, like, well, I'm going somewhere else, but it sometimes it feels like it's a foregone conclusion that people don't want to leave, but hey, if I'm pulling out my credit card Tuesday before payday to cover things, I might have to look at other options. And I appreciate council in the since 2019, especially, we did the wage study then. I think council has shown amazing support for the staff, and I hope that can continue for these people. And I'm sorry for getting into the weeds, I have a guy when Orchard Ridge happens who's a single parent that has his kid at home and leaves their kid unattended to get here. The staff loves this city, and I appreciate more than hearing that they are the most valuable asset that the city has. So.
Just one thing, and obviously now, because now these meetings are recorded and people are listening to this, maybe this doesn't make as much sense, but my thought was that as directors, you could help us by sending the message to them that we want to give them 40% raises, right? Like, I look at the salaries, I go down the list here and I think, how are these guys living? How are they surviving? Because Josh, I'm dipping into my credit card the week before payday, right? Like, and I'm not saying that like for me, I'm just saying that like, that we're all feeling it for sure. And so I would ask that you relay to them, we want to give them everything, and also maybe relay back to us that the impression from you is that if what we give them, they'll be happy also. And I mean, I got this feeling that like if we don't do 8% plus the 3, if we don't do the 11%, then like, I mean, that's expected, that's like, yeah, they better do that type of thing, you know what I mean? I don't know, and maybe that's how we should be looking at it. But, it feels very much like, yeah, you have to do that, or.
It does, and I agree with John, it feels like we've almost been pressured to this point as elected officials, and.
Which I'm not saying we still
And
won't do.
And I'm not trying to be I'm representing at this position, a lot of people who are struggling. And it's kind of like I use the analogy, but these people need to understand that they know what their jobs are, they were hired to do that, and there is an expectation of them to do things, and I know as long as I was here, everybody always went the extra mile to try to do their jobs, but, you know, it's like my uncle told me when he hired me in construction and put me on a shovel. He said, God, that's a lousy job, I hate to make you do it, but that's what I hired you for. And I did it, and I did it every day. And I appreciate everything the employees do, but I also have to appreciate when I asked a person last night, your mother sits at home and she's on a fixed income, if we raise our taxes 11%, how is this going to affect her? And he goes, she can't pay it. I'm like, what? He says, she can't pay it. She couldn't make that. And that's what I have to struggle with. So it's a double-edged sword, and it's tearing at me from one side and the other, you know?
And I think what we're trying to do is, again, give you the best information we can, express what the needs are. And I think what we've presented is the best information we have with what's out there, trying to stay competitive in the market. And that's what we've included in the budget. We think that's where you need to be. But of course, you're the decision makers. Obviously, we understand
Well,
that.
and I've actually looked at this, because I looked at all the percentage. As you know, I rate this stuff. Probably you thought maybe I didn't read it. I don't know.
No, we know you read it.
All right. So, and I look at it and I go, well, if you're making $50,000 a year at Kaysville City and you're making $100,000 a year at Kaysville City, a loaf of bread costs the same and a gallon of milk costs the same. And I say, you know, is there a possible way to take this budget and say, I don't even want to mess with the 3% that's at the discretion of the department heads, because that's between you and your employee. That's based on their work and what you feel. And I would hope you would never just give somebody that 3% if they're just an average employee, but you just did it because
It's expected.
you were upset or was it expected or whatever. But I sat and thought, to help out with this a little bit, is there a possibility that we could say, if you make 90,000 and above, you get a 4% COLA. If you make 80,000 to 70,000, you get a 6% COLA or whatever, 5%. If you, and graduate that COLA down to these poor people who are making $40,000 and $50,000 a year, who it is really affecting the most when you have 8 or 20 or 10 or 15% increase in the deal. And I said, is that a possible way? And I know you guys beat me to death about using the power money, and I'm absolutely convinced there's still $2 million in excess in that power fund. And if it's the will of the people, and we need to raise taxes for our operations, then let's give them $200 back. and it would cost us, there's 9,700 residential users, and you say, well, why don't you give it to the commercial people? Because they don't own the power company. It's the residents that own the power company. So you could do almost everything we're wanting to do, and you could give back, and we don't, and this is what it says in the ordinance. It says if we have excess money in the power fund, you return it back to the people. It says it right in the ordinance. So I thought, all right, let's take that $2 million, and if you take that $2 million and you divide it by 9,700 or 800, it's about $200 a person. Well, that $200 a person would almost cover his tax increase. I know it's a one-time deal, but at least you're paying them back for something.
I take a little exception with that, with the power fund. I don't, with what we're seeing there, what the needs are in the power fund, I get a little nervous about.
But let's make the power fund an asset and not a liability.
Well, but, and I think Prop 5 was a mistake, but I think there's probably different ways to approach that. I think as we look at rates, we need to designate a portion of those rates for transfers. But to take it out of the existing rate structure right now with what we're seeing in the power fund makes me nervous.
This is money that is sitting there that has been built up. The existing rate structure is different. It's based on, and I like your idea of the graduating fee schedule for when we can't, when it goes like this, you know. I'm trying to fix this problem. That's what I'm trying to do, and I'm trying to think out of the box, because I realize there's 120 people that affects this, but our decision affects 33,000. And so that's where I'm trying to weigh these two things together. And then all I'm doing is putting out there an idea.
I was gonna say, you know, Mike, when you're talking about how when you used to work for the city, things were different, and I'm sure they were. I think there was a different work ethic then. It's a generational thing too, I think. And so Abby spoke to the fact that she knows what the younger people are looking for. We have a really young workforce. I think that we've all heard that many times, and so it's hard to be able to compare it exactly, I guess is what I'm saying. You know, yeah, I was taught you work, you eat what's on your plate, you do what you have to do. This generation is different. They've been raised by all of us, so it's our fault. But you know, they have a different mentality in terms of there's not an expectation. I don't think that we feel like, well, my kids are right there too.
We're awesome.
You know,
come on now.
but it's a different expectation. It's a different reality that they live in, and so for us to be able to retain and keep the workforce that we have and not have to rehire, I think we do have to think a little bit differently than we've thought in the past about jobs. I don't think that the presentation, even when I've talked to everybody, it's not you do this or we're all leaving. That's not it at all. Mm-hmm. But it really is the feeling of, you know, if we don't get some kind of a bump, we're going to have to leave. Now, granted, public servants, people who work for the government, you know, you do it for a lot of reasons. You can make more money in the private sector for sure, but you don't get the benefits, you don't get the pension, you don't get the stability that you're supposed to have as a government employee. And so I think that for us that work in the public sector, I never got raises. You know, we own our own company, we still don't get raises. And our workforce is different, but they're also paid 3 times what people who work for the city are paid. And so I think that's kind of a hard thing to compare, you know.
Oh, I agree.
Because even though we're all hurting across the board and it's costing more money, I think it's sometimes hard for us to not think with that other public hat or private sector hat on, putting ourselves in this position over here. So that's all I wanted to say. Just I've never heard that, you know, you guys do this or we're all leaving, or it's not a threat at all. I think it's just the reality. I was talking to Brett Anderson, mayor of Farmington, last night or the other night, and I said, what are you doing? So last year they did an 8%, 11% total raise. He said that it's still not enough. This year they're going to do 5% and 3%, and they still did a mid-year adjustment for their first responders. And he said, and still at that big of a raise increase, he said a couple years ago Farmington was at the top. Now we're towards the bottom, and the city manager and everybody's telling him, okay, you're doing this and it's great, but it's still not going to fix next year. So I think that's a bigger discussion that we should have as a state and as a county to hold rates, but to fix the problem now that we're facing, I think we just need to think about it a little bit differently. Yeah. Because none of us want to do it. I mean, obviously, nobody wants to have more money come out of our pockets, but at the same time, if we don't have our employees here doing the job that they're doing, we're not doing a good job for our city because we're not protecting the assets that we have, so that's just me.
I'm gonna speak up and say something selfish, but on behalf of me and my fellow department directors, on the notion of, I mean, I would absolutely take a hold on getting an increase or get less of an increase if it means my employees get more. But I do want to say that your department directors and this group of fine folks that I have the privilege to work with are some of the most hardworking. I take my computer home with me pretty much every single night. I didn't last night because I knew I wasn't gonna work when I got home from the meeting, but we work after hours, we work long hours, we don't get paid overtime. And I feel like just because we are some of the higher paid, it doesn't necessarily mean that we should be, penalized or treated differently because of that. But again, I speak for myself, but I think all the directors in the room would probably agree that if it means we can have a better workplace for our employees or retain employees that are excellent, that we want to keep, and that's what the council's decision was, then, we would support that. But it is a little disappointing to hear that because, and I'm not saying that people who will make less, work less, put less effort, that's absolutely not the true, but the stress that we all have with the items that we have to deal with, what comes through, the professionalism that we have, I feel like that's worthy to be treated the same as everybody else.
Well, I would echo some of what Melinda's saying too. My concern with giving some of our higher paid employees less is those are my supervisors. And as we've gotten younger, we've put more of the burden on them to do more and do better. And to disenfranchise that group in my department would be, that would not be good. And that's the group I rely on probably the most right now.
No, I don't like the idea. I mean, I see why Mike went there, because I thought the same thing. I mean, I think that your initial thought is like, oh, well, can we just help but it would cause it would cause a friction and like
Appreciate it.
But I mean, I think it's a good, I mean, I see where his brain was going with it. We're just trying to think of a million ways to figure it out, but.
And where I came from on this too, is I think it's a tragedy that we have almost a 60% difference in wages in our structure. We have, based on your graph, and I'm danging it, I should have put a blue thing on it, it's the little circles in here. We have 34% or so that are above average. We have 34% that are 46 that are below average. We should have those a lot more close, that gap should be a lot closer. As a city as a whole, that gap should be, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get it so that we are, as a city of 35,000 people to grow to 45,000, trying to get that so we don't have such a division between higher and lower paid people.
Is that compensation study not based on us, a certain job compared to another job?
So that's, just so this is clear, this is citywide. So across the whole city, 38% of our positions are above average when compared with the same position in other cities. And also to clarify, I think when you look at these lower end, below, more than 20% below average, a lot of those are the higher paying positions, like the director.
That's what I don't know.
And so it's not necessarily saying it's the lower paid people that are below average.
Because if our maintenance people are 25% below average, the people actually out there, then that's a tragedy.
And again, this isn't perfect. This is average.
Yeah,
had that
trying, and there's a big discrepancy there, and I'm trying
So
to
I
figure
think
out.
what we're trying to do is adjust the pay range so we stay competitive, so we stay average or better than average. I would hope that every one of our positions were above average.
But are you talking better than average with Salt Lake City or better than average with Syracuse City?
And we've got that data.
I know, that's what I'm asking.
But I don't think there's a distinction between those two markets anymore. I think everybody in this room, all the department heads, we're competing with Salt Lake City for those same positions. So to say that, we don't have to compete with Salt Lake City may have been true at some point, but is not true any longer.
And we've taken those anomalies out, because I think you're right, Nick, that for most of the time, we're competing with Salt Lake City, but city manager, we're not competing with Salt Lake City. And we've taken those out of the data.
Dean and I went through every position and we looked at all the comparisons, and if there were anomalies, we tried to take those out.
And once again, I'm looking at revenue streams in order to fund these things. And when I look at what the revenue streams of 100,000, a city based of 100,000 people with a huge retail business and all that, and try to compare that with the revenue streams in Kaysville City, when you're talking, realistically, you're talking not 33,000 taxpayers, you're talking 10,000 different residents, taxpayers.
So for example, when we looked at Lehigh, we kept the power guys in Lehigh because we're competing with those guys. But we took out the city manager, we took out the finance director, we took out community development director. We took all those positions out of the data because we consider those as anomalies.
All right. I mean, I just looked at this and I just didn't feel good, the fact that the first one in the mid-range says that 57 are above and 36 are below. It seemed like such a huge discrepancy.
Well, that just shows that, about 65-70% of our positions across the city are below average. That's pretty much what it's saying.
And that's the range, not what they're getting.
It's just the range.
Correct?
Yeah, correct. It's not their actual pay.
That's why it's so
It's their
important
pay
to
range.
To shift the range.
shift the ranges.
And then when I try to compare, I always try to look at where are the revenue streams coming from? How do you function? People criticize us for using fund balance. I keep hearing people talking about fund balance, kicking a can down the road, and I'm exactly the opposite. We used $1 million of savings last year, and that meant we had $2 million. We still would have had the $2 million to pay this year. It's just $1 million of it would have already been in the budget because we raised taxes. The difference is we wouldn't have used $1 million last year, and it'd really be $3 million. We would have taken $1 million last year, $2 million this year in taxes to get it to that point. We never would have used that $1 million, so we used $3 million instead of $4 million, what we would have used. So I am one person who's glad we did use reserves last year. And that's what I'm trying to look at, like, what can we pay for with some of these things to get that
You said that,
0.4?
So where do you want to go, council?
I don't know, that's why I'm throwing, that's why I'm
Do
trying,
you want us
our
to,
discussion is gone, I haven't heard a fix, and I'm trying to come up with a fix. That's why I wanna give people back some money.
How do we do that though, when we just raise power rates?
Because
how do we do that when we-
as you have said all along, these are completely separate funds.
They are separate funds,
They
for
are
sure.
separate
But
funds.
people don't
These are
know
money
that.
in reserve, and I want to look at the power company, and that's what the ordinance says. The ordinance says if there was excess revenues, it would go back to the people. That's the one thing we've never done. We went from about a reserve of, and Brian, I know you could spend that money, we could rebuild everything, we could do it. But we're at a time where things are tough and people have to pinch a little and everybody's hurting a little. So if we can give a little bit back to them, I mean, this tax increase would come almost as a wash if we would do this one time. And it wouldn't hurt so bad this year. It would hurt more next year, and hopefully things are a little better next year than they are this year. But I don't know what the future holds. But the fact that we're able to use some of, some of those assets to help make this softer. And I don't care how you do it, either write them a check, which, that costs money, or you credit their accounts.
I was wondering what it would cost
Could
to
it-
do the reimbursement, 'cause I think it's an interesting idea, but if it's gonna
Could it
cost
be used
more.
as a
Well,
grant kind of program
I think if I
instead?
understand the ordinance, it says we'll reduce it through rate reduction.
I think that's correct.
I don't want to know reading, I could probably find it really fast.
So,
Anyway,
directors, what are you, nobody talked about what I said, and now I'm nervous. I mean, how do you feel as far as like, are you getting the general impression from your employees that they are like, oh man, the council doesn't even want to give us 8%, and if they don't give us 8%, we hate them?
I don't think, at least speaking for my people, I don't think there's any bad feelings or anything like that. I think what we've done is we've told them, hey, we base our COLA off of URS. For the years that they felt like, hey, I should have got more, we tell them, this is the guideline we go off of. So my people, they knew what the URS COLA this year was well before I did. Because that's what we told them. So they kind of track it on their own. So I think that's where maybe some of that expectation is come from, is they watched, many cities get 8, 10, 12% last year, and they got, I can't remember. Yeah, or 4.7. They got that last year.
Yeah.
And so that was a year.
This is comparing to URS.
Oh, yeah. So we followed URS is what you're saying.
Yeah, so I think that's, at least for my people, that's where they've come up with kind of this.
but Saul, your people do understand that even though it's an 8%, they don't get more than 4 every year.
URS,
Yeah.
the retirees.
Yeah, they don't pay more than 4.
I don't know what
They bank it for the next year until they catch up. It might take 4
Until
years to catch up, but they
until they-
catch up. And they don't ever do more than 4 because the state can't take that kind of a hit in there.
Well, I don't know, Mike. I'm just telling you what I think that.
That's, and we would, if we said this and we banked it and took the 4, it would be a much softer hit for us, and
And then eventually they would catch up.
eventually they would catch up, just like the URS does.
But it doesn't help with that pie chart.
And I think in a lot of our conversations, we also need to take into account the fact that we pay really low property tax and we have really low income, sales tax revenue. I mean, in both of those are in the bottom 4. We can't have all the things.
Well, and to your point there, Kaysville, we've known what Kaysville has been and will always be. And we want it to be this cute little quaint bedroom community, and people live in Kaysville because of it. We don't have a Walmart here and people like that. So I think part of the conversation that we have is partly that is quality of life. We're paying for quality of life, and we're not another city that's different than Kaysville. I mean, there's some perks for living here, but it's also, there's some price
There's a cost.
attached to it. There's a cost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know it's hard, believe me, my taxes would go up a lot if we do this. And I don't like it either, but at the same time, I like living here, I like the quality of life, and I'm willing to pay for it, right?
And I do hate the idea that Mike brought up of, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, of, people on fixed income, but also younger families. It hurts my heart to see that there are very few people my age and definitely younger who can afford to live in the city when it's a great place for kids. It's a great place for families. And I don't know what the balance is, but I mean, I see it from both sides, I guess.
So who else does this, that way of paying it out? Because I mean, in some ways, Dean, I feel like you're talking about 2 problems. You're talking about wages, if wages are low, you don't fix that by raising all wages. You find don't you find those jobs that are below average
Well, I
and
think
just bring them up like as a totally different subject?
I think what we suggested is we need to do a market adjustment across the board for everyone. And then we need to identify, I think there are 4 or 5 positions out there that are significantly below market.
Yeah.
And I think the assistant finance director is one of those. I think the city engineer is one of those. I think the attorney is one of those. I think the fire engineer is one of those. We need to identify those 5 or 6 and adjust the pay range, not necessarily give them the full increase if they're not at the top of their step, but send the message that this is what this position should be paid, and that's what we're going to set it at. Now, if there are some of those that are already at the top of the step, then yeah, I think they ought to move with that. But I think as I've looked at the 5 or 6, they're probably most of them are not at the top of the range now. That makes sense?
No, yeah, I mean, I just feel like it's different, like, you don't solve that problem necessarily by raising everybody 8%. I mean, I feel like they're 2 separate issues. I think the COLA, like, say if I'm making 10 grand less than the person in the other city, like, and I'm making 50 grand, you give me 8% increase, that's $4,200 more a year or whatever. I'm still below everybody else, plus those people that were making 60, which is 10 grand less than me, they got their 8% COLA, so now I'm still behind. So I feel like
do it specific by position. I mean, that's how Syracuse does it. They do a really similar analysis to what we did with the same data, and they do adjustments by position. So everyone gets kind of different raises, and that's how they try to keep up with the market.
Right? And I still think you give cost of living obviously increases, but I'm saying, like, I think to Mike's point, what he's saying is like, we want to be just average above average with everybody rather than such a
And
problem.
I don't think it can be fixed in 1 year.
No.
Well, that's what I'm trying to figure out, what you just said, we think across the board we should raise and I don't think you should, because all you're doing is taking the top ones and making them offset. You take 4% or 8 across the board, 8% of somebody making 120,000 a year, it makes it further away from the person making 50,000 a year. It just makes it further
Well,
away.
they're totally different jobs.
They're not
They're
being
not
compared
comparable
against the
jobs.
50,000. They're compared against their market.
Yeah, no, does it make sense what I'm saying?
I think we are separate.
I think you do need to be looking at that issue, and then also the COLA, and I guess the question is, Chief brought up a great point, if all the employees are looking at that, URS, and the way that URS does it is but they catch up. Imagine they also do it that way, because it keeps people staying with them, because it's like, you get to recoup.
URS is retirement, so it's payment to the retirees.
Okay.
Do you have a question? So on that 3% or that merit raise, I understand not everyone gets it in a department. So what happens with the extra money that has not been spent? Does it just go back into the general fund?
Yeah, it goes back general fund and carried over to fund balance for the
Okay,
next
so then it just goes to the fund balance?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
And because we have those separate classifications, it's not going to be an issue where if I don't give this guy 3%, then I can go spend it
Somewhere else.
Yeah.
Because personnel is a different bucket.
But theoretically, managers could go to their employees and say, you haven't gotten a merit increase for a couple of years. Now I have 3% or whatever it is to be. Could they all get that in the department?
Yeah, we budget as if everyone were eligible for a full merit, if they're not at the top of their range.
How many, though, I think Mayor Tran brings up a great point. It'd be nice to know how many don't get that, because like what she's saying is, in a pinch, in a tough year like this, if a lot of people are used to only getting the 1, if we said across the board, regardless, everybody gets the 3, then that could make a 2 percentage point difference. It could help.
But it also hurts
you guys'
It
ability.
hurts when you have employees that are really doing a good job, and then you have somebody who's not, and they get the same raise. That kind of hurts the morale.
That's not okay, yeah.
Because that's all based on job performance.
Yeah,
too.
that's true.
And so you still want to be able to have, you have to earn a certain percentage of what you're getting.
How about instead of budgeting for the full amount, you just budget for 3 people per department or something to get that? Would that help? And
Well,
take
because
the
if you
difference.
have everybody in your department, that's
But you guys have said that never
fantastic.
happens. I'm just
I don't
wondering,
know,
is
I
there
mean,
ways
yeah.
to move money around a little bit to,
Yeah, I think because the way we budget, this rolls over next year's reserves.
okay, so it just
So
goes
it
back
really
in, so it
doesn't
really
have
doesn't matter.
a direct impact on the budget, I don't think.
But would it change it so that we're not, like, if we budgeted for, say, 2%, but then authorize them still to give 3%?
When you're talking the 2%, are you talking the
Merit, yeah, if we budgeted for 2% merit, but then authorize staff to give 3%, then we wouldn't be taxing people extra to put money into our savings for next year. I mean, I love having money in our savings.
That's what I mean,
I guess the other option,
we're not,
you could say, across the board, citywide, we're gonna have a 5% savings on personnel costs. So we're going to reduce what we're asking for by that 5%, something like that, rather than tell departments that you can only give 2%.
Makes sense.
Because there are some departments that I think everyone ought to have the full merit.
and maybe they work.
You guys could probably look at that analytics of the last 3 years and actually come up with a fairly decent average of how much has been rolled over.
Well, that's one of my notes as we go forward. Maybe we say that very thing, is maybe we say there's a miscellaneous savings of $50,000 or something like that, and plug it in as fund balance.
Yeah.
And that was one way to lessen the impact.
Okay.
Just whatever we can do. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, we want to help you have the tools you need for your employees. But at the same time, we want to be able to see, okay, what can we do to be creative to get there and soften the blow, right? Where do we go from here then?
You know, I do want to just say, especially having been a former city manager, I truly understand in the closest way possible how difficult your jobs are as elected officials and the tough decisions that you have to make. You're limited, like at the end of all this, you're limited with the tools that you have to provide the resources to the organization, the staff, the employees, the community that they want to have. And in my experience, increasing property tax rates really is oftentimes the only tool that can be effective. And that is also frowned upon so strongly by the elected officials, the community at times. And so, you know, just know that I have a lot of empathy for the job that you have to do. You have to make tough decisions. And whatever you implement, then, you know, we march forward with as stewards of your policy. But I would echo the comments that have been made about the greatest assets we have in this organization. It's not equipment, it's not your power grid, it is your employees. And, you know, there is going to be a decision that's gonna make some people unhappy, other people happy, and that's just kind of the nature of the beast. But, you know, we have already implemented the transportation utility fee here. That is a great tool, and thankfully it's now legal. A great tool to work around property taxes, but at the end, that's really, you know, this is one of those hard times when I see the answer being whatever that increase is with the property tax rates. And I think if that's what the council does choose to go forward with, I think that we can provide speaking points and talking points to help the public understand. They might not accept it or like it, but I think we can at least help to provide speaking points to help the public understand, you know, that this is, I mean, I've been in government for 20 years as well, and these last few years have been incredibly weird. And, you know, and I know last year we took care of the police department. That was absolutely something that was needed to do. And Murray did that my last year with them as well. But rumblings from other employees were like, well, what about us? And so while absolutely those changes are necessary and we have to put public safety, I mean, that's one of the highest priorities. But I have challenges in my department as well, and I can't tell you how freaking lucky we were last year that we were able to hire Jim and that, we were able to get Gordon back. But, the building inspection world, building inspectors is as tenable as public safety is. They could leave tomorrow and go make money somewhere else. But I think people choose to stay, and I have to tell you, it's taken me a long time, and excuse me if I get emotional, but it's taken me a long time to finally land in a place that has a good culture, good elected officials that are sincere in their duties, and I know that you guys will make the right decision to keep that culture in place, as hard as that decision will be.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, we don't have to make this decision today, right? So,
No, we do have to make decisions on how we present the tentative budget.
okay.
And it doesn't have to be done today, but
That's the 18th. It needs to be.
But I think, from what I'm hearing, I think we could have a proposal that would at least get us to a point where we could present a tentative budget.
So I wouldn't be, I'm, like I said, this is the most important thing I do. There's been a lot of information given out today, and before we direct you and give you a direction where to go, I would want to meet again.
And we can do it certainly before the tentative budget.
Yes,
Yeah, let's do it.
before the
Yeah.
tentative budget, because I think at this point, we need to give you direction on the tentative budget, and I'm not quite sure where it's at yet.
Can I make some suggestions?
Mhm.
Do you wanna do it now, or do you wanna do it when we get together with the council with you?
I want to do it now.
Okay.
Okay?
Let's go to the gap that we're facing.
Quick.
So this is the number. Okay.
What page is this, Levi?
Yeah, let me
What
get
was-
started.
What was before it, so we can find it?
The middle section is,
Fund summaries?
it's the third section, fund summaries.
Okay.
So I think you're on, right? Yeah, that's it.
The one that says every percent of COLA is $120,000. Sorry, I had to make you jealous.
Wait, what was your note, Mike? Every 1% equals
Every
120.
1% COLA is $120,000.
Every percent you change is
Yeah.
about
Okay,
$120,000.
thank you.
Now remember, this is just general fund. We're not talking any of the other funds, there are other issues involved, but since property taxes
Keep going.
are tied to the general fund,
Here we go.
how can we reduce that?
Right, that's the
personnel,
key.
operating, one more.
And I hope I'm not speaking out of
Okay,
turn.
okay.
Departments here.
Okay, how can we reduce it? Good question.
Okay, after hearing from what Saul has told us today, he's willing to shift some capital improvements, the building improvements, maybe the gym equipment. That's probably, it's not a huge number, but it's probably $65,000.
65 for police? Wait,
Wait, let's go. Okay, where's this?
this is,
And
right,
and
yeah.
I'd rather speak in generalities.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
I think
so 60.
the
65?
ambulance,
Yeah.
65, just
Oh, I thought it was 15.
That's part of it.
Well, it's just
It's
part of
another
it.
thing.
a combination of several.
Oh,
things.
okay.
I don't want to go one by one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, I see, okay.
Generally, I think the ambulance we can do what we talked about, is doing a lease purchase on that. That's $430,000.
So the 786 will go down, 400 something, that 636 will go down to 60 something thousand for police.
Okay.
I haven't talked to Ryan about this, but in Ryan's operating budget, he has Arctic Wolf.
Right.
which I think is a valuable resource to have, but it's $90,000.
Arctic Wolf.
It's a software
Software
Okay.
monitoring.
and it's 90,000 a year.
Well,
And
it's there,
subscriptions.
that's where there's a little bit of one time, 90,000 is the initial year,
Okay.
going forward, 50,000.
50, okay.
I think maybe we can explore some other avenues there where we can do two-party authentication
Okay.
and some other things that might help us. I'm gonna suggest that all the vehicles, with the exception of the police, that we fund through fund balance. There's $350,000. I'm going to suggest that interest earnings, we plug additional revenue there. We have programmed earnings of about 3.5%. The PTIF right now
What's your difference?
was 4.9.
9.
So we're earning some interest earnings there that I think we can program in 24. Doesn't mean it's gonna stay that way in 25,
How much would that be?
at $150,000
What was that again? Sorry.
Interest.
interest earnings.
An extra 150,000.
We'll just get that from interest.
I think there's some miscellaneous things that we can look at, a very discussion about if not everyone gets merit, we can program some fund balance for that.
Okay.
And I think
We're
generally,
almost to $1 million.
Yeah, we can get it.
we think we can get it to the point where we're talking a tax increase of about $1.4 million.
So I was doing the math in my head, I was close.
That's pretty good.
Which would,
About $10.
on a $600,000 home, it would be a $10 a month increase.
Yeah.
And I think that's reasonable to submit to our voters, our residents. Since we did nothing last year, and I think I'd recommend we present the tentative budget that way. And then we can still have discussion.
I think that's great.
And where does that get us, that $10 a month increase?
It gets us 1.4 million.
Well, like looking forward, the next couple of years,
Oh.
like, is that just like bare minimum? We're still gonna be in hot water next year?
Well, we're still using fund balance, and I think a lot depends on what revenues look like next year with sales tax.
It's the right time to do it though, because
Don't you
it
think?
is the
Yes,
right
yeah.
time. But I do, I think that it's good that we're not using it on things that are perpetual spends, so.
And I think the most important thing this does, it sends a message to our employees that we've targeted a market adjustment that shows how valuable they are to us.
Good
I think,
good speech.
yeah.
But before we meet and talk as a group again, let's see what will come. Let's not send out a message to everybody yet.
Oh,
Let's
no.
wait.
They understand that.
In fact, can you guys go back to them and tell them, I think it's gonna be high.
Go back and tell us it's gonna be
So that
2.
when it comes
Oh,
up.
so that when it comes back, you look like you're us.
Yeah, guys, they're not stupid.
And they're probably listening to this, so now they already know.
Well, Dean, I'm just thinking like $10 versus like 12 versus 14.
Would it be better to
Yeah,
do a
what
little
else
more? Is that
could
what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, looking forward, because future councils, I think, yeah, for so many years, Kaysville kept rates lower and lower. And we're kind of really paying the price now, trying to get really creative. And so I don't like tax increases whatsoever, but
We think $10 to $15 is a reasonable
a
request.
$20 a month increase is too much for, especially.
Yeah.
But if this is down to 10 and we could do 15, like what else? Could we make ourselves in a better position?
Sure.
I
So
mean,
that we don't have to.
Well, I just think we should have that discussion.
Yeah,
Let's have the
exactly.
discussion, okay.
Yeah,
Let's
we're
kind of agreeing on 10. I'm saying let's go at 5. But let's have that discussion.
Yeah.
Okay, let's have
Or
the
5,
discussion.
10, 15, what is that?
Yeah.
So are you okay if we put together a tentative budget with what we've talked about today and then let you
No.
look at it?
I'm not. I'm one person.
Right.
I want to sit down now with the council and hammer this out a little more.
Okay.
Because this is so important to me.
Is there anything that we've suggested that you would not like us to?
It's important to all of us. I mean, for sure, Mike, it's not just,
You're just suggesting there might be other things.
There might be.
Okay.
And let's have a discussion.
yeah.
Well, what we just went through was really helpful
Yes.
to
yes.
see like, okay, what can we start shaving off?
So when do we want to have another meeting?
LHM, let's have a meeting.
We work for you.
Okay, so. What works for you guys?
Sorry to do
I can do it
that,
anytime, so.
I think it's a good idea, Mike.
The more conversations we have, the better information.
I would hate to put it off a full week.
So midweek?
I'd rather do it earlier next week to give us.
I'm willing to come
How does,
Wednesday night. Is everybody willing, is anybody else not willing to come on a Wednesday night? For you, it might be easier to get babysitter in the evening.
Yeah, it's easier to have Sean at night, but whatever works.
Yeah, I know it.
I could do-
You just, be just you and Levi.
Yeah.
We work by the month.
yeah,
I'm like,
I do.
And what's your
Yeah.
schedule?
I could do Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday night, so
I
whatever
can't
works for you
do
guys.
Tuesday evening, I've got a
Okay,
meeting council thing. And it's the last one, so.
Are you talking Wednesday the 10th?
we're talking either Monday, the 8th, or the 10th.
This one.
John, what's your schedule
Monday, the
usually in the
8th or
evenings?
We watch a couple good shows that come out Wednesday.
And you guys are all,
What if you
he's
wait?
he's
You could
really,
binge longer.
you gotta understand, John's really upset.
Said
We
last,
did not recognize his birthday last week.
I know.
or this week,
Did you have another one this week?
another birthday.
perpetual.
His-
It's
It's his
gaining
birthday
interest.
month, 4-week period of
Gaining
celebration.
interest.
Happy birthday.
No, thank you, it was a week ago,
So Dean, what
and he
works for
sat
you,
here.
Levi, Monday or Wednesday? You're good with either? You too, Levi, do you need to check?
Might have one.
And you want just two of us there?
We don't need everyone to,
And Marie.
unless you guys are dying to.
I'm
Oh,
not
man.
re-recording.
Oh, yeah, for you.
And Marie, that's a given.
What works for you?
I'm not here on Mondays.
Okay, Wednesday, let's do Wednesday.
Okay, but you'll give us a notice for Wednesday then?
I would
But you need
suggest
to give
though,
notice, don't you,
in
24 hours?
in preparation for the meeting, one of my asks would be though, that we do look at if there's any of those specific jobs that you think are in danger that just need a raise. While we're doing it, maybe we do need to look
Yeah,
at
we
those
do need to
people.
look at that.
Well, what about some of the,
Sorry.
there were some asks for some
We're
additional employees too.
I
not
did
even
have
talking
the-
about
Not
that.
even
It's
talking
on the
about
table.
On the table.
Okay.
Talking about
I
cutting,
mean,
you
I think
add-
it should be on the table, but I guess.
Well, you are a vote, so
Yeah.
if you have two more friends that want it on the table, we can definitely put it there.
Do I have two friends that
Because
want
it'll be-
our money back?
And the
Yes,
chief can
you
really
do.
get to talk, well, maybe we have to have like a closed session with him about that stuff, but I don't know, I still don't understand the letter, where they were trying to say if that was all about COLA, or if that was about something totally different, I don't know.
I think it was just providing some information, overall, generally speaking, not specific to
Okay.
any of us.
How early could you do Wednesday?
Just right before dinner, probably.
I'll buy you dinner this time, John.
5?
I could do earlier.
I can do early, let's do 3. Does 3 work?
Oatmeal,
I would rather do it
I
earlier.
would too. I'd
'Cause that
love
might
to
have
come
a
at 3. Does 3 work for you
3?
Wednesday?
Over the day, right?
John, you work
sure.
from home, you can do whatever.
Wednesday, what's the date?
The 10th? Let's do it at 3, yes?
Tell me when.
You gonna send the invite, or do I need
Does that
to?
work for you, Abby?
I think so, yeah.
Do you think
I don't always have a calendar.
Wednesday at 3.
Yeah, let's
I'll-
maybe
I'll
ask them.
double check.
Abby's kids come home right at 3,
Well, I'll pick Sean up early from work.
4,
Yeah,
3, 4.
3 is fine, 4 is
Do you have
fine.
surgeries?
Is 3:30
he
better?
doesn't do anything.
Hey, check it out, I work really hard.
He just smiles. He just smiles and chats it up with
He
people.
hands them the box.
I do like to do your
John's a
haircut,
really
John.
nice guy.
Thank
Is
you.
that help?
It's like beat up on John. Yeah, whatever works for, what works best for you, Abby?
We can do 3, we can do 4, whatever, if we wanna meet earlier, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I need to double check a few things, but
Okay. So keep Wednesday open
Okay.
from 3-ish.
Like Tingsville, they put 3.
Who puts this back together?
And
Well, we don't have money for an assistant, John.
we'll meet as department heads next week, and we'll talk
We should
about
put that in the budget.
anything
Council
that we
assistant.
think we can add value. And
In our budget, Jean, just for information, did you take out council?
Yeah, can we
raise?
take out the
You
council
took that
thing?
council, that saves us
It's-
$5,000,
At
right?
least $5,000 for us and whatever it takes out for you in addition to that.
Oh, yeah. Are we okay scratching our 10% council
Oh,
wages?
Unless we wanna keep
Wage
the mayors.
No.
I mean, if you want me to come Wednesday is the question, I guess.
Amen to
You know,
what,
I'm
that's
gonna-
exactly how our employees are gonna feel, and they're gonna be so happy to show up because we're,
Well, I
Taking
think,
care of
I don't
them.
think we should scratch that. Cause I think all of us, just like the employees,
We're happy.
we are valued, we struggle, I struggle with my
Totally agree.
should we
Day
match it
job
though?
and-
Should we match
Just
whatever
give
we're doing
yourselves the
with
same
them?
COLA that we get.
Do we get COLA?
no, you haven't for years.
I don't-
That's why we're trying to do something.
I
Do we
think that's
Do
fair.
we just tell ourselves that we're doing good and then we get COLA?
I think it's a discussion to have, but no, I mean, we're putting off so many things this year. I don't see why we couldn't put this off this year, but also acknowledge that it's something that probably should happen for future councils.
It's a,
I agree.
if you're going to do it, it's probably the year to do it, because it's election year, then that affects the next, and it's not necessarily, I don't think it's great to put that on a brand new council to do. You know, I mean, I like that they, when they did the last
But
one,
they said it was
4 years
effective in
ago,
next year,
they did it the year before Tammy and I came in,
but this would be effective
which didn't make us
January.
same thing.
Yeah.
It'd be
Oh,
effective
oh.
for the next.
It doesn't follow the fiscal year.
It does follow,
That's what I was
but
saying.
you could
Oh,
say that.
I see what you mean.
Okay, yeah, we could, okay. For those of us that are still here in January.
Well, it's kind of it's a way of saying like, hey, we realize that having gone through this, we realize that there's a little bit more value to this, and we're gonna take care of people that decide to run in the future rather than make them do that. I don't know.
Okay, well,
I mean, shit, you just paid for it with the gym equipment. These guys
Well, I'd
are
rather
over
a
lifting
treadmill
milk
than a
jugs.
race. Who wants to get a treadmill that skips?
they're just gonna be out of shape and then they can't run fast and get bad guys. So, I don't know, that might affect our quality, I'm not
Let's
sure.
just quit talking like added stuff.
Great, good.
Okay,
That was awesome.
done?
Thanks, everyone. for
Thanks, everybody.
your time. We need a motion.
I'm not in charge.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
A motion so moved.
Second,
second,
all in favor?
aye.
Aye. Happy Cinco de Mayo, everybody.
Hey, Taco Bell's open.